Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of season 4. Jürgen, can you believe it? 4th season.
Yeah, fast.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So for our first episode, why don't we have a little recap or a little chat about what happened last year? You know, the most important things we saw or things that stood out for you?
Yeah, sure. A few things stood out for me. Well, we started the year slow in terms of milk production.
Yeah, first half of the year wasn't that interesting, but
No.
especially later on in the year,
People were still
changed.
worried on bird flu, which was happening in the US, of course. Blue tongue still in Europe because that impacted the end of 2024 so much. We saw really high butter prices, fat prices in Europe as well. Skim was acting more normal than the butter.
Kind of range bound on skim
Yeah.
first half of the year. Yeah.
And then we saw margins improving, increasing, farm gate payout increasing.
Feed costs were relatively low,
Feed
right?
costs were low as well. And that led to strong milk production increases, stronger than anticipated, perhaps, in the US, in Europe, in New Zealand.
Yeah, everything looked good and milk production just seemed to explode at some point.
Yeah, all the animal diseases were contained, more or less.
So because
all of
the animal diseases, so a lot of farmers kept cows longer than they usually would because they were afraid of the blue tongue within Europe, right?
Yeah, of a copy of 2024 where some of the cows became sick and milk production really struggled. So, better safe than sorry, let's keep those cows and the older cows because we might have a few sick cows, etc. But it was contained way better.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of the year, there was also foot-and-mouth disease threats in Germany and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was contained pretty quickly.
And the second half was okay. Same goes for the US. So you didn't hear farmers complaining, which is rare.
Well, and then if we look at this year, our expectations, let's look at, compared to last year, what we think is here to stay, what changed, what things do we expect will be different this year, and just in general, what things do you think are, what should we watch out for this year?
Yeah, nice question, I think. I had a look at things to stay. I think, of course, high protein whey and everything high protein is...
Good demand for that is here to stay.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
When you look at, for example, the US products report in November, US had really strong milk production. Skim milk powder production and non-fat dry milk production was really low because a lot of the milk has been shifting to those new facilities we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, for the cheese so that they can use the whey for the higher whey products.
Yeah, because demand is so strong and it's becoming casual, more or less, in your, Dunkin' Donuts with, or any other fast food brand, but with proteins added. Stuff like that. I think that's here to stay. That's one thing.
Yeah, but that's probably here to stay longer term, not just for this year, but also medium long or even long term.
Yeah. And maybe spreading over more to Europe, depending on, because you could argue that it's related, for example, to Ozempic, and then people are worried that for example, fat is getting less popular because of Ozempic.
Yeah.
So far, that's, for example, the butter consumption has been pretty strong. So, animal diseases, you could say, hey, that should be off the radar by now, but there's some cases in Poland. More or less finally. We expected it earlier, but last year didn't really happen. But now
that's case of blue tongue, right?
Blue tongue, yeah. Did I say bird flu? I sometimes
No,
confuse.
I just thought you said just cases.
Oh,
so
yeah,
just
good.
to clarify, it's blue tongue.
Blue tongue.
Yeah.
Blue tongue. I think it's variant 3. So that's something that people should be watching, as Poland is a steady grower in milk production in Europe. It's a dairy powerhouse in that sense, and it's stronger now than, for example, the Dutch milk production.
But isn't it strange? Because I thought with lower temperatures, it shouldn't be there now, right?
No, but if these cases increased in December, and indeed recent weeks were cold in Poland as well, so that's why it's on my watch list. But the cases in December increased pretty fast, and I do too wonder, hey, what's up with this because of the temperature? But Polish farmers are a bit worried.
Oh, okay.
So it should be on our watch list because Poland is a steady grower. If Poland doesn't grow, then that affects the availability of dairy products.
Okay, so that might be something that could be different than last year because we actually saw it a lot less than we expected.
Yeah, the virus still has to reach the main Polish milk production regions, though. So that's you still have some time to anticipate.
Okay, but something to watch, definitely. Yeah. And how about the cow cycles? Because we also understood that part of the cows gave birth later than usual, which
because
also
of diseases.
Because of diseases, yeah, indeed, which also caused the higher milk production. End of last year.
Yeah, it shifts your typical milk curve, and a cow needs actually the full 12 months.
Yeah.
So if you calve, say a month later, it usually was a few weeks, but say it's a month later, then that cow is calving a month later the next year too.
Yeah. So that'll continue over the next couple of years.
Yeah. So for part of the herd, not the full herd, but part of the herd has a different curve.
Yeah. Does that mean that overall within Europe you're expecting a flatter curve, so less of a peak and higher low season?
Yeah. Well, to a certain extent, but you still could see a pretty pronounced flush, for example, in April, May. So it's not that it's completely flat, but it's a bit more flat than what you normally would expect.
Yeah. So
until a few years from now, where the whole
they're all back in their normal cycle. Yeah. Okay, makes sense. And so when the prices, when the milk production really increased, we saw prices drop, especially on everything except for whey prices. What are you expecting on the price side of things? Because right now milk production is still really good, but farm gate milk prices are going down. Do you think that's going to change at some point?
I think so. It's the debate at your typical European farmer's kitchen table should now be, hey, that farm gate payout is getting really close to our break even. If you're a young farmer or you're not the biggest farm in Europe, then that's definitely a discussion point at your kitchen table, and you would want to debate, hey, shall we kill our cows, or at least part of them? And you could, of course, kill, well, it's the same thing, the older ones, because you kept them, because you were afraid of, what we just discussed. So I would expect that those would be slaughtered. In the US, slaughter figures are also slightly higher, as their margin too is lower than it has been a few months ago. So that's a thing. Would you, as a farmer, you could call it quits as a Dutch farmer, of course, because you don't want to go through another cycle, and government doesn't want you to farm, etc.
And restrictions and everything.
So that also limits stuff. But say you're in it for the long run and you're an efficient farmer, then your discussion would be, hey, is this a short drop in price? Because if you go culling, the replacement heifer is currently also expensive. So,
Yeah, you have to think before you make a decision like that.
Yeah, that's the dilemma.
Yeah.
But going by margins in Europe, you would expect slaughter to be happening, and you would expect that it's very hard to beat those really strong milk production figures in the second half of the year.
Yeah, but do you think we'll beat them first half of the year?
Perhaps towards the end of the first half of the year, because I do think that we ended the year with strong growth in Germany, in France, in the UK, in those weekly reports, and they're not gone all of a sudden. But eventually, especially in Q2, the numbers get harder to beat. And I think that the incentive to ramp up production is also limited. So if you would beat them, it would be close to the second half of the quarter.
Yeah. Okay, and so say that farm gate milk prices move down a bit more, because they are still moving down, and then farmers start culling some cows, milk production goes down. Do you expect, for example, skimmed and butter prices to really rally, to move up quickly, or?
You still have to eat your way through a little bit of stock. Although for S&P, production has been really strong. Some of these months had 25% more production than the year prior, which is really strong, because that means 25, 30 kilotons of extra production. But because the US didn't produce so much and Europe was competitive on price, Europe was the cheapest from all three by far. So their exports were actually pretty good and the European market share was strong. So there was definitely a stock build. but not as strong as it could have because European exports were strong. So that sort of helps. So you still have to eat your way through some stock. There's still a flush to come. But yeah, when milk production is limited, you would expect prices to increase eventually.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting time because when things are sort of on a turning point, and we might be on a turning point in the first half of the year before milk production starts to struggle, you get a whole set of dynamics with short coverings and people think, hey, this might be the bottom of the market, let's buy. And then all of a sudden, a strong production report comes in again and then prices move down. So it's interesting times.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, usually butter is more volatile than skimmed,
Yeah.
moves a lot quicker, bigger steps usually. Do you think that will be different this year because the butter stocks are quite high compared to what they usually are?
Yeah,
and compared to skimmed?
Yeah, and I think retail has returned. That sort of helps. I'm not too sure about the industrial butter because of all the hybrid, where they mix milk fat with other stuff to replace
Changed
it.
formulas.
Yeah, because it was so expensive a year ago. And is that here for the long run, or do we? I love my.
Will they
real
switch
butter.
back, or will they? Yeah, that's a good question.
So that's also something I wonder about a little bit. But butter can move faster, yeah. And there's also the dynamic with cream, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
And high over multi-year cream is still in demand and being consumed. And that also helps. That's sometimes a driver for butter prices.
Yeah, and we've talked quite a bit about the supply side, because I mean, at the moment it does seem like the market is supply driven. Anything interesting on the demand side that you'd like to mention?
As we discussed, the high protein stuff is still interesting to me because it shifts a lot of stuff and it continues to have really strong demand. And we previously had Rob, for example, here in the studio as well.
Well, actually, about that, there's going to be a lot more cheese production because
who's going to eat all the cheese?
Exactly. Yeah. Where is all the cheese going to go? Because also, I read that pizza change in the US aren't doing as great. Volumes are moving down, so less cheese going there. Who's going to eat all that cheese? Yeah,
so far the cheese consumption, even in the US, hasn't been that bad. But you do wonder indeed, hey, who's going to eat all the cheese, even as a Dutch person? So that would be something that you would wonder about on the demand side.
Yeah.
I'm slightly positive on Middle Eastern demand for skimmed, also because they were into Iranian S&P, for example, and now they have to look at Europe because of the price competitivity and other stuff. So I'm not too depressed on the demand for skimmed, for example.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. High over dairy demand globally is still pretty fair, but it's the supply side is also interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's probably going to be an interesting year.
Yeah.
So if you would mention, instead of doing bulls and bears this time, if you would mention 3 main things to watch for this year, or that you're planning to keep an eye on this year?
Milk production. That's one, because you would want to know, hey, when's the turning point?
Yeah.
Is it in Q1? And I think that's being decided, for example, by farmers' decision. Will they decide before or after the flush?
Yeah. Yeah,
that it's
definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah, governmental policies, but that's a little bit of European bias, but Europe is still a dairy powerhouse. And of some of these countries, you haven't heard farmers complain, well, except for French farmers and Italian ones on Mercosur, the trade deal.
Yeah.
But other than that, you haven't heard them complain about a lot because the margin simply was great. But the governmental policies are still in place. The Irish were lucky because they extended, but the Dutch are still in some deep water, and you haven't heard them complain because the margin was good. Now the margin is not as great anymore, so it's still there.
Yeah. So definitely. Yeah. So main thing is watch the milk production and see how that develops.
Yeah, and watch slaughter and stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe animal diseases. See how that develops.
Yeah, Polish blue tongue and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Well, I think that's a nice way to end the first episode.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone.